We're counting down the 5 battlefield moves that made Napoleon nearly unbeatable. From armies that crossed continents in days to formations that vanished and reappeared like ghosts, each strategy shattered centuries of military tradition. Facing the might of Austria, Russia, Prussia, and Britain, Napoleon won almost 60 out of 70 battles, leaving generals across Europe asking, how did he do it? This list reveals the 5 tactical innovations, part speed, part deception, part pure shock, that turned the emperor into history's deadliest chess master. Some moves relied on organization and lightning coordination, while others used sheer firepower or the art of attack from the rear. Which maneuver set the foundation for domination, and which one proved his true genius? Here are the 5 tactical moves that made Napoleon unstoppable, beginning with the radical new way he organized entire armies. Before Napoleon, European armies creaked forward in a single, lumbering mass. Tens of thousands of men, horses, and wagons crawled along one narrow road. Every halt turned into chaos. Supplies bottlenecked, orders vanished in the dust, and a single blocked bridge could paralyze an entire campaign. Napoleon changed all of that at a stroke. He broke his army into permanent corps, each one a miniature force of 25,000 to 30,000 men, complete with its own infantry, cavalry, artillery, and staff. These corps moved on separate roads, foraged for their own food, and could fight alone for days if needed. The real genius was not just the structure, but the coordination. Marshal Berthier, his chief of staff, ran a relentless courier network and standardized every order, making sure that every corps commander knew exactly where to march and when to strike. Napoleon once said, "A corps of 25,000 to 30,000 men can be left on its own. It can fight or avoid action according to circumstances." That discipline and clarity turned independent columns into a single, responsive fighting machine. Proof came in 1805, when the Grande Armée, 210,000 strong, marched from the Rhine to the Danube in just 17 days. Austrian General Mack, expecting the usual slow approach, found himself surrounded at Ulm without a major battle. 60,000 Austrians surrendered almost overnight. The corps system let Napoleon move 3 times faster than his enemies, live off the land, and concentrate overwhelming force wherever he chose. While the coalitions crawled in columns, the French army seemed to appear everywhere at once. This was the backbone of every victory that followed: speed, flexibility, and the power to strike before the enemy even knew where the danger was coming from. Napoleon's next move was all about geometry and deception. Instead of lining his corps up in a single file, he spread them across the countryside, each one a day's march from the next, all screened by thousands of cavalry pushing ahead and probing for the enemy. From his central command post, Napoleon could pivot the entire army in any direction. If new intelligence arrived, he shifted the cavalry screen and told a different corps to take the lead. Orders rippled out through Berthier's staff, and within hours, 100,000 men could change course as if they were a single body. That kind of flexibility was unmatched in Europe. No one else could match it. The Prussians in 1806 never saw it coming. Their scouts reported French columns far to the northwest, at least 50 miles away. In reality, Napoleon's corps were fanning out on parallel roads, closing in on Jena and Auerstedt. While the Prussian generals debated, the French army concentrated overnight, some corps marching over 40 kilometers in a single day. By dawn, nearly 100,000 French soldiers had converged on the battlefield, ready to strike from multiple directions. That speed turned confusion into catastrophe for the enemy. The Prussian command, caught off guard and split apart, faced a crushing defeat. Napoleon's ability to concentrate his forces within 24 to 48 hours turned the entire campaign into a trap. Enemies never knew where the blow would fall until it was too late. This was more than speed. It was strategic ambiguity, with every corps ready to support the others or pivot to a new threat at a moment's notice. The result was battles won before they even began, opponents left chasing shadows, and a military mind that made coordination look like a weakness for everyone else. The noose closed, and the trap was complete. At Austerlitz in 1805, Napoleon set his trap with almost surgical precision. He let his center appear weak, inviting the Allied armies, Austrians and Russians together, to descend from the Pratzen heights. As the enemy poured forward, convinced they could break the French line, Napoleon waited. The moment the heights stood nearly empty, he unleashed his real plan. Hidden reserves surged up the slopes, seized the high ground, and split the coalition army in two. Suddenly the Allies found themselves with their best troops isolated and their retreat cut off. Panic swept through the ranks as Russian and Austrian soldiers realized the French were now behind them, blocking the road home. Supply wagons and artillery became trapped in the chaos. What looked like a promising attack had turned into a disaster. The French pressed their advantage, rolling up the enemy's exposed flanks and driving thousands into the frozen ponds below. In just a few hours, the Allied army was broken. More than 15,000 men were killed, wounded, or captured. Napoleon's favorite move wasn't just about attacking from the front. He struck where his enemies felt safest, at their backs and at their lifeline. When an army loses its supply and its escape, discipline collapses. Surrender becomes the only option. This wasn't just victory. It was annihilation by design, engineered through deception and perfect timing. The enemy's options vanished and the battlefield belonged to Napoleon. Thunder rolled across the fields as French gunners wheeled their pieces into line. When Napoleon wanted to break an army, he didn't nibble at the edges. He smashed straight through the center with sheer force. The Grand Battery was his answer. Not a handful of cannons scattered along the front, but a wall of 80, 90, sometimes more than 100 guns, all firing together. At Friedland in 1807, the Russians held firm behind the Alle River, their infantry packed tight and their own guns blazing. By late afternoon, Napoleon had pulled every available cannon from his corps, assembling over 100 on the Sortlaca Heights. Gunners loaded round shot, solid iron balls meant to bounce and tear through entire ranks. Canister came next, tin cans packed with musket balls and scrap metal, turning each gun into a giant shotgun at close range. The order came, and the French guns erupted. Each volley sent iron screaming through the Russian lines. A single cannonball, skipping across the ground, could cut down a dozen men in moments. Canister tore gaps in the packed formations, leaving bodies and shattered arms behind. Russian batteries tried to answer, but French fire smashed them into silence. For nearly an hour, the barrage never let up. Smoke blanketed the field, and the thunder drowned out every other sound. When the guns finally fell silent, the Russian line was in ruins. Infantry regiments had been shredded, artillery crews abandoned their pieces, and panic swept through the survivors. French infantry and cavalry surged forward, pouring through the breach. The Grand Battery didn't just open the door, it ripped the enemy's heart out. Artillery wasn't support anymore. It was the main event, the hammer blow that turned a position into a graveyard. With firepower like this, even the strongest line could be swept away in minutes. When Napoleon faced coalitions that dwarfed his own army, he did not retreat or dig in. He looked for the gap, the weak seam between enemy forces, and put his army right in the middle. This was the strategy of the central position. With interior lines, he could shift his corps rapidly, strike one enemy before the others could react, and win battles even when outnumbered 6-1. In 1814, as the Allies closed in on Paris, Napoleon's empire seemed doomed. Russian, Prussian, and Austrian armies advanced from different directions, convinced sheer numbers would crush the French. Instead, Napoleon used the roads of eastern France like chessboard squares. Cavalry screens and scouts kept enemy columns separated, feeding him just enough time to concentrate his corps against each opponent in turn. The result was a campaign that stunned Europe. At Champaubert, Montmirail, Château-Thierry, and Vauchamp, 4 battles in just 6 days, Napoleon's smaller force beat the Allies again and again. He moved faster than their messengers, striking isolated corps before their partners could arrive. In each fight, he achieved local superiority, turning a desperate defense into a string of victories. The French lost fewer than 5,000 men, the Allies over 17,000. For a moment, it looked as if the old magic had returned. Napoleon tried the same approach at Waterloo, hoping to split the British and Prussian armies. But this time, delays and missed orders let his enemies unite. Even so, the central position strategy remains one of his greatest legacies. It was the capstone move, a synthesis of speed, organization, and timing. By dividing his enemies and defeating them piecemeal, Napoleon rewrote the rules of war. Numbers alone no longer guaranteed victory. With the right moves, even the smallest army could stand against the world. Across all 5 moves, one pattern emerges. Napoleon won not because of sheer force, but by turning speed, deception, and coordination into weapons. His battles show that in war, the mind outmaneuvers muscle. That legacy shapes military strategy even today. Which tactic impressed you most? Let us know below.